is your NTV News, and today we break down the latest developments in the Ukraine-Russia ceasefire negotiations. A story that intertwines war, diplomacy, corruption, and Europe's evolving economic future. On May 16th of this year, Russian and Ukrainian delegations met in Istanbul for their first direct talks since 2022. It's been a while. The meeting lasted less than 2 hours and concluded without a ceasefire agreement. Russia maintained hardline demands, including Ukrainian troop withdrawals from certain territories, which Ukraine deemed unacceptable. Despite the lack of progress on a ceasefire, both sides did, however, agree to a significant prisoner exchange, with each country pledging to release 1,000 prisoners of war.
Мы удовлетворены результатом и готовы продолжать контакты. О чем договорились? Первое. В ближайшие дни произойдет масштабный обмен пленными 1000 на 1000 человек. Второе. Украинская сторона запросила прямые переговоры между руководителями государств. Мы приняли этот запрос к сведению. И третье. Мы договорились о том, что каждая сторона представит свое видение возможного будущего прекращения огня.
Ukrainian President Zelenskyy criticized Russian President Putin's absence from the talks, interpreting it as a lack of commitment to peace. The day after the talks, a Russian drone strike targeted a civilian evacuation bus in Ukraine's Sumy region, killing 9 people, as reported. This further strained the already fragile negotiations. The key takeaway from this is that while the prisoner exchange is a positive development, the failure to reach a ceasefire and the ongoing violence highlights the deep divisions and challenges ahead in the peace process. Can future negotiations bridge the gap between Russia's demands and Ukraine's sovereignty concerns to achieve a lasting peace? Time will tell. But adding to the intrigue to the negotiations, Russian President Vladimir Putin chose not to attend the peace summit in Turkey, sending a lower-tier delegation instead. Putin's no-show in Turkey beggars the question, was that a strategic move or just indifference? An analysis of this is that Putin's absence could suggest confidence that time favors Russia militarily. Alternatively, it may reflect internal pressures or diplomatic maneuvering. Key takeaway from all of this is that absence sends a message louder than words. But peace without Putin may be peace in name only. In a dramatic twist, President Donald Trump announced he intends to personally speak with both Putin and Zelenskyy in an effort to broker peace. On social media, Trump called the war a bloodbath and claimed that as many as 5,000 soldiers are dying weekly. Trump's claim of 5,000 weekly deaths is unverified, but we do know that there has been a lot of loss of life and a lot of destruction in this conflict. And just one life alone is one too many.
Well, I think it's time for us to just do it. I said, they all said Putin was going and Zelenskyy was going, and I said, if I don't go, I guarantee Putin's not going. And he didn't go, and I understand that, but we're going to get it. We're going to get it done. We got to get it done. 5,000 young people are being killed every single week on average, and we're going to get it done.
Now, Trump positions himself as the anti-war candidate, so it will be interesting to see to what extent he can deliver on his campaign promises. Could Trump succeed where current leaders have failed? Time will tell. As NATO attempts to navigate this volatile situation, it faces its own internal crisis. Belgian authorities have launched investigations into bribery and irregularities in the awarding of NATO defense contracts. Arrests have already been made. Interesting, more corruption comes to surface. This scandal in itself undermines trust in Western military coordination. If already the public sentiment in regards to the continuous war wasn't bad enough, how might this impact the future of EU-NATO collaboration, especially given the current elections that are ongoing with certain countries? Romania, and now Poland. Against this backdrop, the EU has announced a plan to inject 800 billion euros into defense over the next 4 years. Defense spending is no longer taboo in Brussels. This move is seen as a major pivot toward military self-reliance and a reaction to growing global instability. This is significant, especially in regards to how President Trump has stated that he no longer wants to overspend in terms of the NATO budget because, in his view, the United States taxpayer is paying too much and they're not getting enough back, and for what interest. So over the last year, European leaders like President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer have been stating that they need to bolster their defenses, especially given the current climate of uncertainty. This would be the largest coordinated military investment in EU history. Supporters argue it's long overdue. However, critics warn it will drain social and environmental programs. We know already from a previous video we released that maybe Brussels cannot really be trusted in how they spend European taxpayers' money at the end of the day. Can Europe afford to militarize without derailing its green and social goals? And perhaps a better question is, can the European public and taxpayer truly trust the transparency going forward in making such a large investment? As the EU militarizes, its industries are shifting gears. Germany's car giants, once the pride of its economy, are struggling. And we all know that Germany is famous for its remarkable automotive engineering. Volkswagen, Audi, and Bosch have all announced job cuts. And in a stunning pivot, Volkswagen is reportedly in talks to convert some plants to military production. The automotive industry is declining in Europe, and this is due to the EV transition, labor costs, and green policy pressure. If you've noticed a lot of those electric cars and scooters and other things, transport popping up around in different cities in Europe, well, that's part of the reason. And Volkswagen has confirmed it's exploring military contracts. The key takeaway here is that the economic decline in one sector is fueling growth in another, and that's for defense. And as you've already been told, there's an exorbitant amount of money, 800 billion, being funneled and invested to the EU defense. Whilst Europe is facing greater economic struggles, from inflation to electricity bills, and a plethora of other issues where the average European citizen is trying to tighten the budget and just trying to provide for their families and bring some money home, it's tough enough even to save. The job market isn't as flush as it used to be. Younger Europeans are facing a harder time trying to get into work. But this standard now seems to be shifting towards a war industry or conflict-driven industry. And is that a good thing? Personally, I don't think so. And again, like I said, profits in general are given more of a priority than the interests of the average citizen, the taxpayer, and the vulnerable people that make up our society. In parallel with the Istanbul talks, the European Commission unveiled its 18th package of sanctions against Russia. We already know how well those have worked, targeting over 200 individuals and entities involved in military and financial networks. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized that Europe must keep tightening the economic screws on the Kremlin and praised Poland's unwavering stance on Ukrainian support. I mean, I guess they can't get enough, right? Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk echoed these sentiments, warning that Russia's aggression is a direct threat to European security. Now, I'm not too sure whether most people think the same way, but this all seems like a lot of bravado, and at the end of the day, Russia is a superpower. Given the context of the situation, it just seems a bit more dangerous to be trying to amplify more towards military and aggressive tactics. I feel that there's less being put or invested towards diplomacy and towards peace. So let's see what will happen over the coming weeks. Meanwhile, Poland's upcoming elections are drawing international attention as several pro-EU candidates have made Russian interference a central campaign theme. Where have we heard that one before, folks? The intersection of these sanctions and Polish politics highlights Warsaw's growing role in shaping Europe's Eastern policy front. So as the EU tightens economic pressure on Russia with the 18th sanctions package, Poland positions itself as a bulwark against Russian influence. This is in stark contrast to a lot of other Eastern European countries on the Balkan side. Sanctions are now both a foreign policy tool and a domestic political rallying cry. Do they work? Personally, I don't think they do, and they only end up hurting the average person who didn't really ask to be in a war in the first place, regardless of what side you take. How will Polish political outcomes affect broader EU cohesion on Ukraine? It could create more aggression and provocation towards the Russian side, or it could perhaps stave off further incursions that are occurring right now in Ukraine. With the EU shifting towards defense production and NATO under scrutiny, Europe is at a geopolitical crossroads, like they have been a multitude of times in the past. If a ceasefire is achieved, will the military buildup slow down? Or will the war economy become the new normal? Well, if we have history to go by, it looks like this will be another new military-industrial complex that is developing, only this time centered in Europe.
But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This seems to always be the case every couple of decades, as we've seen since the height of the Industrial Revolution. War has always generated a new economy, and since the development of the military-industrial complex, as President Eisenhower warned us about, profit over war seems to matter more than the value of a human life. And more people are complaining about social issues, about the quality of life, from elderly to homeless people to people with disabilities, and not enough attention is being put there. It's kind of crazy when you think about investing $800 billion into defense. You have to wonder where the priorities lie. This economic revival may now depend only on war-related industries that we're seeing in Europe. And the final question is the pursuit of peace now dependent on the sustainability of conflict-driven economies? I mean, online they say drama sells. As war diplomacy falters and economies transform, Europe faces an identity crisis, one that may define its role in the next global era. We'll be watching, and we hope you will be too. This was NTV. Thanks for tuning in.